Ladies and gentlemen, our guest on the American Conversations tonight is Marybeth Markey, the President of International Campaign for Tibet. Before taking the helm of the presidency, Madam Markey was the Vice President for International Advocacy. Prior to joining the ICT, Markey was the Deputy and main spokesperson of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate for 8 years. Ladies and gentlemen, now we have Madam Markey talking on Tibetan refugee issues in Nepal, because she had just visited Nepal and has some fresh thoughts on it. Welcome to the American Conversations.
Thank you, Krishna. It's a pleasure to be here.
What was the purpose of your visit to Nepal?
I go to Nepal fairly frequently. I try to go at least a few times a year. And if I'm not there, other people at the International Campaign for Tibet are there. We have offices in Europe, and my colleagues here also in Washington visit Nepal. So we are frequent visitors to Nepal, and I must say it's a country that we look forward to visiting. It's a beautiful country and the people are extremely warm. That's why I am always happy to go. This most recent visit was to look really at some of the more intractable problems that Tibetans, long-staying Tibetan refugees are having. Problems of status, problems of documentation, problems of increased Chinese influence, whether real or perceived, in their communities. And of course, in addition to that, the issue of Tibetan refugees who are still coming out of Tibet and transiting through Nepalese territory on their way to India. So these are some of the issues that I was looking at even during my very brief visit.
So after your visit, how do you assess the visit as fruitful, or how do you like to term it?
I wish I could have been there longer. It was, for the very short period that I was there, very useful. I met with many Nepalis. I met with the Tibetan refugees, new arrivals. I also met with Tibetans living in the community who have been living there for some time. I did not meet with any Nepali government officials during this visit. I didn't request any of those meetings. I had a brief meeting with the U.S. Embassy there. The American Embassy spends a great deal of time focusing on the Tibetan refugee issue, and I met with some wonderful people at the embassy there who are working very hard to reflect the genuine concern for Tibetan refugees that is held by the American people and also by the United States Congress as their representatives.
So you did not meet with the government officials of Nepal, like the President or the Prime Minister, to whom Tom Lantos' Commission of the U.S. Congress on Human Rights Issues had recently sent letters saying that the Nepal government should provide exit visas to those Tibetan refugees who want to go elsewhere and live the life the way they want.
No, I didn't put in a request to meet with the government officials at this time. I was simply there for too short a period of time, and I would have needed to do my assessment on the ground first and then request those meetings. I would think it would be a disservice to go in immediately in a very short period of time and present the case that I had not had time to do adequate on-the-ground field study. During this particular visit, I spent some time in Delhi before going to Nepal, where I did meet with some regional experts, some former Indian government officials as well. And I also went to Dharamsala, which is the seat of the Tibetan exile government, and met with the new Kalan Tripa, the political head of that government, and other officials in his administration. So by the time I got to Nepal, I was really ready to just focus on what I could refresh my understanding of the situation in this very short period of time. And this was really more kind of a refresher of my understanding of what was going on. I did find out rather quickly, in fact, even during this short period of time, of two heavy police presence that were signaled that might be of interest to me. There was Tibetan New Year while I was there, Losar. At the third day of Losar, there was some prayer ceremony at the Bodha Stupa, and I went there and I did see very heavily garbed, armed Nepali police. But by the time I got there, it happened to be the same morning as my meeting at the U.S. Embassy. By the time I got there, the ceremony had ended, and I believe only with minor incident. There had been a few Tibetans detained for rather, well, I'll give you one example that might be interesting, because I think in fact it says a lot of the kind of undue pressure on the Tibetan refugee community. There was a Tibetan man at the Bodha Stupa for the celebration doing his circumambulations. He had a little boy with him, a toddler in his arms, who had a knit cap on his head, on his little head, that said "Free Tibet" with the colors of the flag. They're very popular in the Tibetan community. You can buy them everywhere. And he was detained because this little boy had this Free Tibet cap on, woolen cap on. And you know, the Nepal government has pledged to the Chinese that they will not allow any anti-China activities in Nepal. And I assumed that they thought this little toddler wearing this woolen cap was an anti-Chinese
So that was the only reason why they detained him.
So they detained this man, yes, for that purpose. Now they eventually let him go. I don't know if he was fined, but I believe he was held overnight. So that's the extent of the, I would say, almost you know, silly attitude in this case. But in fact, Tibetans do feel that they are under unfair scrutiny and pressure that has serious consequences. Of course, the Tibetans are grateful for the hospitality that Nepal has extended to them. But there are problems in any community. This community continues to develop, and Nepal has quite a bit of oversight that must be done to make sure that the Tibetans and the future generations of Tibetans, as you said, it's now been many years that this community has been there, they have needs that are unattended to, and they are being quite stifled in the community because of their lack of status. They can't open a bank account, they can't do business, they can't pursue higher education, all of these things. These are critical quality of life issues that must be attended to, and the Tibetans are asking Nepal, please, to see to those needs.
So when you were there, the Tom Lantos Commission's members had sent a letter to the Prime Minister and the President of Nepal,
yes,
saying that the US government has recommitted its promise to resettle the Tibetan refugees like they had done in the year 2005 with the Bhutanese refugees, that they will resettle these refugees and then solve the problem forever. So Nepal's government has not been budging in two of the US requests. What do you think could be the reason behind this?